Hello.
There we go. All right, I think this will work. How's everyone today?
Pretty good.
Yeah, pretty good. Yesterday helped my brain get back into, like, I don't know, thinking about this stuff. I feel like on vacation I did not give it a thought, and it felt very like far away. But last night was good to get back into it.
Yeah, I think I needed the time away a lot because there's sort of a freshness
Mm-hmm.
to a lot of things, but also just that lack of definitely not like in rhythm yet. So hopefully we'll get there. So with that in mind, I don't know. If I turn this off. This is a funny setup here for me. So, I mean, maybe we should think a little bit about I forget what this one starts. The previous chapter, which was 5. Yeah, organization is the message. And that ended with some talk about, there we go, long communications, where we're kind of picking up.
Yeah, the last chapter ended with the theme of the individuality of an organism being more of a process than a substance, so more of a flame than a stone, or more of a form than substance is his language.
I felt like, did he say the flame and stone, or is that your thing? I think
that's what he says. The individuality of the body is that of a flame rather than that of a stone, of a form rather than of a bit of substance.
I think that's actually pretty like apt for what's ahead. Actually, I'll start this recording thing. I think that's a pretty good thing to keep in mind for what he's getting at with. Well, I guess it's more chapter 7. When he gets into the patent stuff and information, I think that's a really interesting topic and kind of fits with that really well. Let me start this here. But yeah, it'll be nice to kind of have a hour session about this. Oh, well, we may not be able to stream it, which is fine. I'll just record it anyway. I'm getting the gist is having a streamer overload or something. Yeah, okay, I'll just do a recording of sorts. Okay. One second here. Okay. There we go. Well, that works too, sure. Here we go. So we were just talking about flamestone form and substance, and kind of alluding to chapter 7, which I was just kind of poking my way through towards sort of after 6. We can start with 6. This was long communication, and I'm curious how people, if any like general feelings about it. I don't know if you put. I didn't look to see if you had notes in here or not, but we can probably look at that.
No, I did not. Anything.
Okay. Um, I think one of the things that I the things that stand out from this for me are basically, I guess this bit here. I'm gonna try to make this just a smaller thing. I keep flipping between this stuff. The bit about jamming, um, which I think is a useful thing to point out, but also like the whole trial as this like von Neumann game, von Neumann game where it's you know between his like overt conceptualization of this as a game, and then he makes one of those statements that's like, oh well, we have to decide if we want law to be like punishment or like he lists these four things, and he takes one of those lines. It's like, well, until we can do um until we can choose one of them, we're gonna have none of them kind of things. Yeah. There are four different tasks to be accomplished in four different methods. Um, until we in the community made up our minds, uh, we'll get none of them. So I don't really know. I think it's a very interesting lens, which is very cybernetic and very um, alternately oriented. Not alternate, but like the mechanism is interesting. Um, and I actually really like the way he explained the as he called them the Indians and the analogy of that, because he was basically saying, you know, if there is and if there's going to be anything like an idealized version of the law, and I'm sure that's quite. I want to kind of show this to my own like Valeria, who is a lot of like law and philosophy person. Yes, in an idealized sense, the citizens would know the outcomes and the meanings, and judges would be interchangeable, and there'd be no difference. And I feel like that's a very. I don't want to say that's the most rationalist bro that Norbert Wiener has sounded, but kind of like I don't think he really is, but you could see like the perfect logic, um, and that sort of aspect of things. So, um, is this just like not showing here?
Oh yeah, it cut off a little bit in the scan.
Oh, okay, all right. So I don't know. I'm kind of just freestyling through this one.
I guess I feel like I agreed with everything he was saying, but it wasn't. Um, and I think a lot of what he was saying was not very controversial, but
mm,
in the law, there's going to be cases of genuine ambiguity. Like you can't. I think this idealized version where it's all a matter of like being as clear as possible, so like judges are interchangeable and things are predictable. That's impossible. I think there will be cases of genuine ambiguity where there's just no correct legal answer, and so judges are going to have to make a decision, and there could be very good reasons for future judges to disagree. And I think that space is where all the legal philosophy that I've read has fallen. It's like, what is the nature of legal disagreement?
mm,
And that's where like a lot of philosophy of law focuses, because like sure this would be the ideal, but in society, and I was kind of hoping he would talk about this because I feel like you could spell this out in cybernetic terms. You're going to have to, there will definitely be cases of genuine ambiguity if the law is something man-made, which it is. If it emerges from a particular social system at a point in time, and then it's supposed to like apply across time. Like it's just much more dynamic and complicated. So I think he's right that this is how it should be. And when there's like no clarity or it's very unpredictable, like that's unfair to citizens as like legal subjects. But when the ideal version is impossible, it's like what do you do with that? And that's what I think much of legal philosophy aims to solve. So I guess this seems like the right kind of ideal. I see what he means when he says it's a problem of communication. But just like the nature of society, I think makes this yes, something to strive for, but the obstacles that you encounter when striving for that are very complicated, and not just a matter of like, oh, it's noise in the communication. I think it's more profound than that. I think there's like deep ambiguities when the law is something like man-made.
Right, or kind of like, and I think the other side of that coin would be, and I don't know if he addresses this later in the book or not, I don't really think he will, but the other side of the coin being, what are the things that are going to afford a more what's going to make the situation more closer to being perfect? In terms of like education or like, I don't know, how do you get to the more perfect information situation? Which I don't necessarily think is really a worthy thing to comment on or think about, but I feel like it's also something that he didn't really go into here, which I think, and again, like I almost like the next chapter better because I think it more completes his view, like completes more salient messages from him or something, or something about it feels a little more tractable. Like I feel like this chapter 6 feels I'm really curious if there was any differences between this and the first book. Is this the one where he gets into McCarthy, like very briefly?
In chapter 7, I think.
Okay, that's chapter 7. Because I feel like this chapter is kind of it's like him kind of stating his piece about the general thing, and just doing this. Here's kind of what, from the point of view of cybernetics, which we value, we see, entropy, we see communication. We want this to be interchangeable. We want the message to be sent and received as clearly as possible, and like that kind of point of view. I get it's sort of his hey cybernetics guy, what do you take about, what's your take on, what's the chapter called, law and communication? I guess that is a chapter on law and communication, and not much more than that from the view he's trying to flesh out. I do think it was interesting comment on sort of precedent versus not precedent. I did actually like the way that he talked about the Indian, just the lack of their under these circumstances, and obviously it's meaning Indians or Native Americans not having the concept of land ownership or whatever that the Europeaners might have had or did have. There's no semblance of justice possible or didn't exist, and I think that harkens back to one of my favorite Norbert Weiner quotes, which is like, the transmission of information is impossible save for as a transmission of alternatives. And he's basically saying there's no alternatives present in this situation, and then no information could be transmitted because there wasn't really, there wasn't a full comprehension of what the choices they had were and the thing. So I think that'd be a really interesting thing to cybernetically break down further, but I don't want to do that here. And I understand Biden also. He's just trying to put it in the context of long communication. I see many writing stuff here.
Oh yeah, I'm just trying to capture what we're saying.
Thank you. So yeah, I don't know. There are a lot of things you could kind of tease at here, but I think it's I don't know if we want to say any more about that kind of a short chapter anyway. I'll kind of dip into chapter 7. Let me see one more thing here. As I had pointed out in earlier chapters, that noise, regarded as a confusing factor in human communications, is damaging but not consciously malicious. This is true as far as scientific communication goes, and to a large extent in ordinary conversation between people. It is most emphatically not true in language as it's used in law courts. So I guess he's saying, noise is a permitted weapon in that fight. You can bring the noise to the table, and the funk, but that's a separate story. I like the end of Von Neumann game. So that's the end of that chapter. It was fairly, wrapped up. So we go from law and communication to communication secrecy and social policy. And I don't know if you you can finish writing that, but then I'll kind of say, what do you think about this chapter, I guess. So I had something too.
I liked the quote you shared. Is that what the screenshot is here?
American one?
Yeah, that was really interesting. But I didn't finish chapter 7. I feel like I didn't get far enough into the patent law business to see his point yet.
I think it's maybe I don't know if I want to use the word prescient, but I feel like it's a really useful thing as we here in 2023, I think, kind of easily grasp and have been told explicitly by now. There's always been kind of how America talks about itself and talks about the world is, for people who are really embedded in America, it's kind of a particular way. And I think this is sort of, I really, for someone who's writing like 100 years ago, I think it's interesting how much a lot of the things he tries to point out as American, both still hold, but also I kind of appreciate. I don't know if it's fair to say this book is really it's not. I don't know if it is. I guess it's sort of a kind of a popular science book at the time. Like it's not his book on cybernetics with mathematics and equations.
Right.
It's quite a highbrow popular science book with all the references and stuff. But it is to that end, I suppose. And so I feel I'd be curious both for this previous chapter on the law and this chapter, and where he does get into McCarthyism. I think there's explicitly saying, yeah, this was changed from first version to second edition, But I think I appreciate the way he kind of talks about some stuff that's indicating there's just different ways of being. And I think this, and here it is on 113, but it's basically saying this quote about um, you know, um, I'm writing this for Americans, and it's a very almost casual juxtaposition to like, oh, the church into Marxism. But I think this is, I think these two things are is a really these two paragraphs I really like for the sake of context and like science communication or like called science. I don't know. I don't know what the proper word is, but like philosophy, history, cultural anthropology of science, is that a thing? I don't know. Um, but just as a comment that like in America, you know, there's the commodification of stuff, and he's saying, I was curious where they're going with it. He's saying, yeah, it's not my business to cavil. I don't really know that word. Whether or not this mercantile attitude is moral or immoral, crass or subtle, it's my business to show that it leads to the misunderstanding and the mistreatment of information as its associated concepts. And then he brings up a patent law. I think this is the one. I mean, I don't know. It's either this one or in the cybernetics book. I'll try to look and see if it's here. Here. Well, it's not coming up in this text. But somewhere Norbert Wiener really goes into news media and its anti-homeostatic like properties and stuff, and how it really dysregulates things. It's kind of funny because I wonder if I can pull this up here. I basically cited I basically quoted Norbert when Marcus, in his latest newsletter, the imminence shitification of the internet. Basically, he's pointing in this thing how, you know, LLMs are creating these huge sanitation problems that will never be solved, which are just generating like bogus books, bogus citing. Like you could make all kinds of copies and variations of anything and have it inspired and do this and so on and so forth, and like, you know, junkification of Amazon. And like I'm just gonna say this. I know well-meaning people who have published books that and I say this as someone who's been guilty of this too. Like I've connived and thought, man, how can I use the internet to like get myself out there? And if I make a book or make a post or if I get a lot of followers, then I'll have some clout. And I've been thinking quite a bit. This is a bit of a tangent, but like I'm thinking of it like I am really kind of trying to step back from the pull of all of this incentivization of get attention. I think it's basically just get attention.
Mhm.
Get attention, you know, economy as we know, but you know, going back to this, Gary's, you know, decrying your basic stuff. I don't really want to go on this, but I think my comment here is basically, oh, weird. The comments look different. Oh, I guess it's because I'm not logged in on this account right now or something. But I made a comment basically referencing the Norbert Wiener quote I just mentioned here earlier today. I don't, you know, read every word Marcus says, but yeah, it kind of is related. But just yeah, and I didn't finish this chapter either, and we don't have to spend too much time here. Let's see. He goes from state secrecy. He mentioned McCarthy here and the State Department, Venice and Renaissance and state secrecy. and then he gets into American, like I said. Um, this is an interesting. Uh, I don't. I'm still kind of wrapping my head around it, but this kind of begins his discussion on, say, it's kind of like the meme about the old, and several centuries ago. Oh, I really want to publish my paper so I can uh, fully understand the way of nature. And then it's like now the modern people are, I really want to finish this paper so I can finally get published in Nature, the magazine. And just like it kind of gets at that, but he's getting it more of like the nature and by which it's produced level of, you know, um, it used to be you'd have this sort of singular tinkerer finding out both like um, the ingenuity, which is necessary to find out scientific facts about the world or like make implements about them. I would add or say to that, and then kind of comparing it to people who discover the law of natures and how you don't necessarily. There was a large divide between what a worksman or a craftsman was doing when he was inventing something to push something forward, and then just discovering in a particular sense. I don't know Daniel Joyce or the Dickens Little Dorrit. I don't know if it's sort of like a Charles Dickens fable-ish kind of thing. I'm not familiar with it. But it was interesting to kind of see this, you know, parallel about who's doing the work and who's kind of making this, I would say, almost like institutionalization of scientific discovery. And he traces that to like Bell Labs and so on. And I guess the Mudfog Association is this British Association for the Advancement of Science. And it goes in like I think General Electric too, yeah. And like kind of where I left off was him talking about like I guess Edison and how he said basically Edison's greatest invention was much more the industrial research laboratory churning out inventions like a business, and then came in the wake of that would be General Electric, Westinghouse, Bell Telephone Labs, and all of these other things that would come as sort of these cohorts and groups of people trying to just, you know, capture the space of innovation and patent it, and so now we're going to sort of demarcate this and build it off there. And he kind of, this is about where I would left off, so we can either go through it here or wait until next time. But information, on the other hand, he's kind of comparing information to, it kind of goes back to what we were talking about here in terms of the flame versus the stone, form versus substance. Power to conserve itself is a very convenient property of a good commodity to have. For example, electricity, conversion of material in terms of gold. Yeah, he says gold right there. So he's kind of saying, commodities that are stable and conserved tend to be, he's contrasting that to information, which information isn't conserved in the same way necessarily, according to him. And he talks about entropy in that context. Information and entropy are not conserved and are equally unsuited for being commodities. So I guess he's trying to point out almost from a detached like assessment of function and mechanism and nature that we want to treat information, and I think he's kind of getting like intellectual property or this space by which information is generated, like in terms of research and stuff like that, may not really fit as much as we want it to be commodified. It may not quite fit that that same, I don't know if I want to say laws or medium, but like it might not fit the same way of relating to it that one might do a commodity that's stable in its nature.
It definitely seems right to me. Just thinking about like how things travel through the internet.
Mm,
I can think of examples of like someone's life work, their however many decades of research, and it manages to like get memed, and like bits and pieces are taken from it. But when it's removed from context, like the bits and pieces that are maybe successfully commodified just kind of become meaningless because the context and the rest of the work matters so much. Um, so with what the speed of the internet reveals, that definitely seems right. That when information like spreads, parts of it are commodified or memed, parts of it successfully spread, parts of it don't, and because of this type of like when parts are spread without their context, that's like an increase in entropy maybe.
mhm.
um, and so when you have like the gold necklace, sure, maybe you can break it in two, and then two things can move through the world. But
But there's
with information, there's like a warping that's possible.
yes, and like if you have half of a gold necklace, it has this subjective value that, well, it's pretty, really nicely designed, but it's still 5 ounces of gold or something, and it
Right.
has these discrete things that are stable or relatively discrete, like attributes that are easily categorizable. And then even if you want to put them in a market value, it's there. And I think everything you said about the memes is really, really on point in the sense that information or these, I don't really, I guess I'll call it information, but yeah, life's work, memes, things are so much more portable than others. And I feel like there's such a shift towards, and going back a little bit to, I guess, the Gary Marcus piece, which is any stand-in piece criticizing memes and AI generated BS or whatever. It could be any. It could. I'm less concerned than it being Marcus than just like a reference point that I happened to see earlier today. But yeah, like there's a weird tension now. It's kind of this thing with like, well, what actually matters in a lot of the most accessible forms of communication, which actually I would say is heavily social media. Like it's not really newspapers, it's not really discussions, it's not, I don't even know if it's maybe like there's not like nobody watches the 6 o'clock news on CBS. That was some of my grandparents did, but there's not really a medium or a space wherein that's when people orient towards success or viability in making something. The most dominant space for that is making something kind of in social media that can easily go viral,
Mhm.
and that makes it what is the most portable part from the life work or the memeable content. And then all right, let's just, it's like kind of like turning up the contrast and reducing, turning up the contrast and then reducing, I don't know, whatever thing. When you're editing a picture or something, like you just like really heavily um taking out a lot of, I guess you could say, the nuance of
Mhm.
of the even just like the properties and the context of their nation of the information. I haven't read one of the books, but I found a book recently on digital humanities that I think touches upon this a little bit, and sort of what do you do with that? Even just like on a personal note, like I just said, I think at the start of this, but I don't know if it was recorded or even yesterday about my books. Oh, you know, these books, and it's just sort of the sense of respite that I'm really, I guess, appreciating or wanting to find, where it's just like I don't have to deal with the social media aspect of things, or the tense pressure for my attention, and the sense of I have to compete in that space. I have to be viable in that space to have followers or likes, or to make, or even just if I'm making something. Well, if you put it on the internet, make sure it's as good SEO, or as interesting, or as a nice headline, or when you start your video, it's got to have a hook right away, and all that stuff. It's just like, oh, like it's sort of like, if what's the cost of entry for using some of this stuff now, and I don't know. There's a bunch of things that could be said about that. We can go back to the text a little bit. I realized this chapter is like much longer. There's several more pages of this chapter, and I don't know if you want to just kind of wade through it slowly, or just try to read it more for next time, or what we're feeling about that. It's been about 40 minutes, 36 minutes so far, so I don't know where we stand.
I only read about until that bit about Edison, like just before that information line. I think I'd rather finish it up next time.
Yeah, I think it's a good idea for us to ease into this stuff because there's a lot going on, and I don't want to burn out. You don't want to. You don't have too much too fast, as the saying goes. So I'm fine with that. I didn't actually realize how long this chapter was, but there's a lot of stuff that gets into, and I assume it's because Norbert is gonna, as he said, like he's basically gonna demarcate this. I'll put this in here. Actually, I meant to do that before. Yeah, like he's just gonna take up across a bunch of different fields, like why the mercantile attitude towards the mercantile attitude is across different fields, what it looks like and why it's questionable, let's say. Okay. So we will continue. Let's say we're kind of around 114, 15.
Yeah, I want to go back to the patent law stuff.
Okay.
How exactly does that support his take on like information not being a commodifiable? I kind of missed that transition.
I think, and I just finished that myself, so I don't really have a full understanding. But I think what I feel like my starting answer to that is going to be, before the advent of industrial research teams, or like these big research, perhaps is a simple way to say it. Before big research, making patents and kind of identifying the intellectual property of something that you want to build was, kind of one person's space, and they're kind of laying claim to that space. And it was more, it was easier to, I think he's kind of arguing it was closer to being a commodity in the whole process of there's there's one person and one space they're trying to demarcate, and one set of things that one person can make. So it's a little bit more like stacked upon itself. And I think he's getting at with the advent of this, and I don't. This is more conjecture than me, or more my own phrasing than him interpreting this necessarily. I think the deal with the patent, stuff and the industrial research teams is that, I'm trying to find a good thing to say here, is that basically that gets more distorted because you're having this group of people that are all claiming this big netted space with a bunch of ideas and multiple ideas and people that can make multiple ideas and things. I think no. And maybe there's something that he's missing that's a little bit better to say there. He goes into this bit about like pawn shops and buyers. But maybe his conclusion for that whole section is just a thing about information cannot be conserved as easily. But like, yeah, I get what you're saying. Like, what's his, like, okay. Invention came to mean not the gadget insight of a shop worker, but the result of careful, comprehensive search by a team of competent scientists. So I think that's basically what I was getting at, although I don't see him say it as explicitly as I kind of hope him to. So, but that's a question for next time, I suppose, too. Okay. Yeah, I think I think what you're saying here in writing out more is like, that would be an interesting thing to flesh out a bit more in like write something small about that. I think that's an interesting. This is very much on my mind in terms of some of the broader like histories of science stuff, because I feel like there's sort of weird pros and cons to that, in the sense of the portability of this makes it, there's something about the accessibility of understanding people's experiences and understanding how other people will see and interpret things, and other people being very, very different from you in certain ways. Like, that's very new. Like, that which enables virality is sort of a really interesting, I don't know, medium, like aspect of the medium or whatever. On the other hand, it's sort of like, in older times, you'd have either the craftsman or just the person, the scientist or philosopher, whatever, kind of doing their stuff, and then the only thing that would really come out would be like like the things they actually wanted to publish. And now it's sort of like, and we talked about this all the time in other contexts, but now there's a trend for people that are serious academics. Like, many people don't desire to publish papers at all anymore, and are much more interested in like high quality academic blogs that evade the whole process and just talk about what they want to talk about. And I feel like that's part of it too, that is part of that conversation. But if we can pick that up next time. I don't have any. There's a bunch of things to talk about, but I'm kind of okay with letting it be here. And I think you're done writing what you want to write about that stuff. So, any other comments before we close up for today? Okay.
don't think so. I
No,
had such high hopes for the law chapter, and it really fell flat for me. Because I think there could be more interesting things to say using cybernetic language about why there actually are deep ambiguities in the law. But just calling it all noise, I thought was that could have been. There's so much more to say, and I'm not sure exactly what it is. I can't jump in and try to say it now, but I'll think about it more.
Yeah. I think I'm good.
Yeah, I agree with that, and I'm curious what I don't know. There are definitely books that are more law cybernetics oriented, and I really wonder what Robert would say about them if we got the chance. But to be continued for next time. There looks to be I think this looks to be an interesting chapter 7 ahead, and I'm curious the different fields that he gets into. But on that note, I will say good night for now, and see you guys later this weekend.
Okay.
See you later.
See you then.
Everybody.
Thanks.
Bye bye.